Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Life and Faith, now in our 23rd season of bringing you stories from faith communities throughout southwestern Ontario. We open the show this morning with an interview with two newly appointed chaplains to youth for the Anglican Diocese of Huron. Next, Richard's Memorial United Church dedicates the latest green improvement to their building. And finally, it's time to attend another Abraham's Cafe at London Public Library. Now let's join Reverend Keith Nethery as he introduces us to the diocesan chaplains to youth, and we hear what they're up to.
Youth ministry. Many will tell you it's not the church tomorrow, it's the church today. The Right Reverend Robert Bennett, Bishop of the Diocese of Huron, has appointed two new youth chaplains, or chaplains to youth. They are the Reverend Marty Levesque and Charlotte Kupak, and they join us today on Life and Faith. So, of course, the first question, what is it to be a chaplain to youth?
I think first and foremost, the thing is to be there to listen, to be there to help direct, and answer some of the questions that I think youth are afraid to ask their parish priests a lot of times. And while they may seem silly, they really want to know the answers.
Charlotte, knowing Marty a little bit, he still is a youth. Maybe his birth certificate might say differently. But is there a sense that you need to almost be in that kind of a mindset and be able to really walk with them?
I don't think you necessarily need to be youthful or young at heart. Maybe might be a better way to look at it. But I think you at least need to be willing to listen. I find youth in general, are willing to engage me as an adult. And they do have serious and adult and fairly grown-up questions too. I think you don't need to be the one that's always out playing games and throwing a ball around with them, although that does help.
Marty, I know we're building on the strength of a wonderful event last year called Clay. And I think both of you were involved in that. So can you tell us a little bit about the joining together of the Anglican and Lutheran families around youth ministry, and how Clay and SOC, and I'm sure you can explain all those things, what those lovely letters stand for, but how that will all impact on the ministry that you're called to do now?
Well, Clay, which is Canadian Lutheran Anglican Youth, is it's a gathering every 2 years somewhere nationally. It brings nationally together Lutherans from the different governance synods and from the various dioceses across Canada. And it's an event that's designed around 4 days of basically praise, worship, and catechumenate work. And SOC is a Lutheran.
It's a bit of an offshoot.
It's an offshoot that came out of Clay, and it stands for Stewards of Creation, but that's in the process of changing the Stewards of Community. And with the advent of Clay becoming an ecumenical endeavor between Lutherans and Anglicans, SOC is reaching out in that same spirit and branding themselves a bit different as ALSOC, Anglican Lutheran Stewards of Community. And these are general meetings of youth to do educational work, but also I think foundationally in both Clay as well as in SOC, there's always a servant event. We learn about Christ, we learn about what Christ does in our lives, but we also find out that what we can do as the hands of Christ in the world.
Charlotte, I had the opportunity to be at Clay last year, just ever so briefly, and was really impressed. There was 1,500 kids somewhere around there together. One of the struggles I hear about youth ministry is that, well, we only have 3 or 4. Talk a little bit about how the 3 or 4 who have a strong bond together, how they fit into that larger group, and does that then help in a sense of balance in kids really having an opportunity to come to understand their faith with their peers?
I think small youth groups are generally the norm. If you look across all churches, not just the Anglican Church, the Lutheran Church. Youth groups in general, I think, are fairly small. That makes it really hard to get kids together. Why would I come out once a week to hang out with my friend that I can hang out with at school? So in building a bigger bridge between groups, we've found that there's that, what do you call it, the sort of that ratio of kids. You have to have that certain breaking point of numbers where all of a sudden they're anonymous enough that they can really open up, but they're trusting and close enough that they know it's a safe environment to do that. That's one of the great things about SOC and the way it's been growing is it allows those youth groups with 3, 4, 5 kids to get together in a group. We had, how many, 60?
61.
61 last weekend. And it's fabulous to see these kids learning about their faith, learning about God, and meeting other kids that are into that and are learning along with them.
Yeah, one of the things I found that through these events, the youth end up connecting with other youth that they would never have met, but they come into relationship and they become friends with each other. And then outside of these events, they're now hanging around with each other, and so they're building more connection. So kids from London are asking their parents to drive them to Tilsonburg for the weekend so they can hang out with their friend, and it's building a stronger sense of Christian community and identity with them.
And I think, and I know this from here at church camp, my guess is that it extends further through things like Clay with social media. You're Facebooking people in Vancouver, and how does that availability of communication and technology help to bring these kids together?
Well, it allows them to always stay in constant contact with each other. So it really creates a sense of belonging, that it's not just they see each other at an event, once every 2 months or once a month or type thing. They're able to build through social media solid friendships, and these friendships we hope, and I think we're starting to see the fruits of that. These friendships are carrying on past when they're 18 to when they're going into university,
yeah.
and when they become young adults and enter into the church. Now I think they're forming themselves through social media and through these wider, bigger groups. As a larger sort of, as we've always envisioned as a diocese or as a greater church. Yeah. And the events really do become a safe place for them to share their faith. Because in secular society nowadays at school, sometimes saying you're a Christian, sort of others you, pushes you out, and now they're and now they're seeing they're not alone in their faith, and they're being strengthened in that. And so these events become a safe place for them to explore that with other people their age.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that are going on now, and I think we have somewhat of a handle on what's gone before. So now the opportunity for the two of you to dream. And Charlotte, first, where do you see youth ministry going? What would you like to see in the time that you hold this, quote, position? What would you like to see develop?
Wow, that's big. I don't know that I've allowed to let myself dream that big yet. I think SOC's got a lot of things going for it right now, and I hate to keep coming back to that, but there is a community of young people developing, and to see that grow and expand just brings such joy to my heart, to see them expanding and getting to know other youth around the diocese is fairly big. So within our term here, I'd love to see some of our youth from different areas connecting and building those friendships.
Marty, I've never known you to not have dreams and aspirations and thoughts and plans, and so where do you see this all heading?
For myself, I always I'm in the process of developing, and we're going to be having a fundraising night. This comedy night that we're having at the cathedral. It's going to be a big fundraiser, and we're hoping to raise a lot of money. And the purpose to raise the money is to be able to pay for as many buses as possible, to take as many children as possible from the Diocese of Huron and from the Eastern Synod of the Lutheran to the next clay gathering in Saskatoon. And to really, instead of just going for 4 days, we'll do a 2-week pilgrimage So it becomes a way for them to enter into a journey, a sacred space that clay will become, and then journey back and come out of it together. At the end of the day, I think one of the things in my own personal story, as I grew up, my church didn't have any of these youth events. They didn't have an opportunity for me to get involved in the church. And instead, I went to where there was things to get involved. Unfortunately, that was on the streets. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol and such involved, and it took my life down a very dark path for a while. And I think if I can, we could work as hard as possible to make sure that even if one kid doesn't go down that path, then it's been a success.
Certainly sounds like a great beginning to a new ministry, a continuing ministry of chaplain to youth in the Diocese of Huron. Marty and Charla, our thanks for guesting with us. For Life and Faith, this is Reverend Keith Nethery.